like to call this meeting to order. This is the Hudson Public Works Committee on Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022. My name is Joy Knudsen. I'm the chair of the Public Works Committee. We have with us our Public Works Director, Mike Mraz, and the City of Hudson and City Engineer, Dean Chamberlain's here. I'm going to call the roll. Mike Kennedy.
Here.
Sarah Brook.
Present.
Okay, we've got our quorum. Everyone is here. First item is a review of the minutes from the last meeting. Any comments or concerns?
Move to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, it carries. Minutes are approved as written. Are no citizen comments present that I can see, so we'll move on to new business. I wanted to say first off that we've got a lot of material and topics to discuss, and I'm hoping that we can make this a little bit of a working, informal session where there's conversation. The first item we're going to take up will be something that we'll need to vote on because we need to take action on a spending decision. But otherwise, we may do a fair amount of discussion over the next two items. So I'm going to turn it over to Dean Chamberlain.
All right, thank you. So we are discussing a possible action regarding the 2022 alley repaving project bids. So we opened bids on July 26th for this project. We would be replacing the pavement on two alleys. The first alley is essentially the alley that runs by the St. Patrick's School parking lot between 3rd and 4th Streets and between River and St. Croix Streets. And then the second alley is the alley immediately south of that, between 3rd and 4th and St. Croix and Oak Streets. We received two bids. The lowest bid is from Pembroke Companies of Menominee. They are the ones that we awarded the sidewalk and curb project to. So we have a good relationship with them. We don't see any problems with that arrangement. The issue is that the lowest bid was above the engineer's estimate. And we are approximately $21,000 short in funding for the project, factoring in we need some funds in there for construction inspection and that kind of stuff in there. So staff suggests shifting funding from the Carmichael Road signal upgrades line item in the 2022 CIP to cover the shortfall here. And just to clarify, this does not mean that we are not doing the signal upgrades project. We got a grant for the project with WSDOT, so that's great. So that kind of reduces our money that we'll have to spend on the project, and also because of how the grant works out with the timing and getting the agreement signed and et cetera, it so worked out that it has to happen, the project has to happen in 2023 instead of 22. So we'll be talking a lot about 2023 projects here coming up shortly. So you'll see that regardless of which funding option is selected in a future conversation here, that project is within all of those options. So we're going to do the project no matter what in 2023 because we have that money and we have a big safety need out there. We want to make sure we do that, but it'll just be, instead of this year, it'll be next year. So that's essentially something to consider as we're talking about this. And so staff recommends approval of the bid to Pembroke Companies with reallocating those funds that we had set aside for 2022 for that project, but instead would be in 2023 for that project, if that makes sense.
So basically, just kind of summarize, we had budgeted $75,000 for the Hanley and Center Drive lights, right? So like Dean said, we got a grant from WSDOT, which is a 90-10 match. So we only needed to put in $30,000, right? So that means we had $45,000 remaining in that CIP. And so we reallocated $15K from that remaining 45 for that patch on O'Neill Road a couple of weeks ago, which means we had $30,000 remaining in that line item, that traffic signal line item. And that's what we're proposing to reallocate to put towards the alley repaving. So like Dean said, we're still doing the signal upgrades next year, But then we're just reallocating some remaining funds in that line item to do this project this year.
And it's correct that it's WISDOT that's holding up doing it this year?
Correct.
It's not our decision that
Yeah.
we're taking the money, it's we
Yeah,
will do it.
with the grant, there's just certain processes, like Dean said, that we need to follow and go through as far as selecting consultants
Okay.
and drafting, the contracts, so on and so forth. So that's why. Yep.
Just out of curiosity, do we have any worries about posing any major safety issues with not doing those, the traffic signals?
Not any more than what's currently out there.
Okay.
It's one of those things where it's nothing that we can do to push the project ahead
Okay.
forward. It's nothing that we can really do.
We're getting nice money and
unless we want to cover it all right now, we could do it right now. But that 90-10 match is really enticing.
absolutely.
So this sounds like this money is, we're not taking it from anything. It's floating in space right now, if you will.
Correct.
It could go other places, sure, but this is what you guys deem as the best thing. So
Yeah.
we're not stealing from anything.
Right.
The other question, or 2A question. That other bid, obviously, it looked like there was a error made in the bid form. So they came in at about $1 million over.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't see that other bid, but I'm assuming all that is rectified, right?
Yeah, so what happened with that other bid is they accidentally put the total cost for that site restoration line in the unit cost.
Okay.
And we have to go based off of what they put in the unit
okay.
cost. And so that multiplied by, so that 3,800 times 420 is what
Okay, they
screwed
weren't trying
everything up. So I did reach out to them and let them know what happened, just so that they weren't caught off guard by you know, what the heck, that kind of thing. So they're also a somewhat new company, so they're probably feeling out how
the ropes,
to bid correctly and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to give them some helpful advice to make sure you don't do this again, because
It might cost you,
yeah, in this case they were already the higher bid anyway, so it wasn't a big
Right, yeah.
difference, but yeah.
And then the other question I have just in general on these, because this isn't the first, time we've seen this layout. So that mobilization, and you have an estimate on this particular one at $5,200. And I don't need to know all the math that goes in that. But I've noticed that on other ones, that always seems to be popped up a lot higher than we estimate. Is that all their mobilization? Are they say, hey, for us to show up day one, it's 18 grand out of the hole? It seems like that's either we're always judging it too low, or do we not think of someone, or is this where they build in their buffer zone?
So I think with that one, so generally we kind of estimate that based off of a certain percentage of the rest of the items is usually how you factor that in. Right, the things that go into mobilization would be essentially like getting your equipment and your people to the site.
Okay.
And so right now, because gas prices and whatnot are also high, the percentage is probably off because of those things. And honestly, I probably should tweak that, knowing that have a few of these bids now that the mobilization has been higher than expected. It wasn't just the mobilization that was higher than expected for this one, but that's a good point to make, that we should make sure to keep an eye on that for the future. But yeah. If we didn't have a line item for mobilization, then those costs, it's not like they go away.
Right.
They'd just be factored into the other things in the bid or whatever. So that's where you kind of take out the mobilization, so that, to get you to show up, here's the dollar amount, and then it's in case we have a quantity that goes over later, we're not paying that inflated number. Say they, instead of having a mobilization charge, they bumped up the pavement by $20 more a ton or something. So if we ended up going over on the asphalt pavement, then we've paid way more than that, that kind of thing. So,
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? How do you feel about proceeding?
I'll make the motion to recommend the approval of the bid from Pember Companies and the approval of reallocating funds from the Carmichael Road Signals Project to the 2022 alley repaving project.
A second.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Okay, our motion has been, we have a first and a second. All in favor, indicate by saying aye. Thank you. Opposed? Okay, that is passed. Okay, so now we're going to get into some discussion, and part of the reason I think it's important just to have a in-depth discussion, as several of us are new on the Public Works Committee, and I also think it helps the public that might view this or be inquiring about the process. So we're going to discuss the proposals for the capital improvement projects going forward for the next actually 5-year plan. And if I understand correctly, we'll be bonding this fall for the next 2 years.
Correct.
So we'll be looking, kind of scrutinizing the first 2 years a little closer. And I would like to ask Mike Mraz to take 5C, and we're going to just switch order there a little bit. And again, the discussion may go back and forth between the two before we vote or make recommendations, if you guys are comfortable with that.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'll give an over. So we'll just touch base on this spreadsheet first, the Excel spreadsheet. So first thing I wanted to make note or have you notice is there's 2 separate colors on your sheet. So the pinkish color, those are the monies that we would look to bond for, bond or take out notes for. The items in blue, those come from other areas funding sources. So that might include like park dedication fees, ARPA funds, TID money, stormwater utility. The numbers in blue are not factored into the bond total that you see at the bottom of each page. Okay? So if you look at the first one, 2023, obviously the one that kind of jumps out to you why there's such a high cost in 2023 is I included a public works facility to start to look at constructing that for the Public Works Department. The Public Works equipment, Sarah, were you here when we passed that Public Works equipment plan? I don't know if you were. So we kind of looked over the next 10 years. We identified pieces of equipment each year. Probably not. So what we did was prior to everybody's time here, we had put together between myself talking to staff, we brought forward a proposal to the Public Works Committee over the next 10 years, and we kind of kept our budget in between $300,000 to $400,000 approximately to continue replacing outdated equipment that needs to be removed from our fleet just due to age and mechanical issues, so on and so forth. So in the Public Works equipment, like I said, you'll see kind of that range in between 300, 400, maybe 425 on all of these sheets. You go down to the streets. This kind of ties into our discussion later on the street maintenance budget. So Dean put together a bunch of basically projections on how many streets we can do based on our funding levels. I arbitrarily took out that $3 million just because it's in the middle. Obviously, we'll have discussions not only here but at Finance and Common Council what's the most comfortable or what's the landing spot for that number based on other factors, because each and every other department is putting in requests for capital, and I know, and I think all of us know here, we can't have it all in one year. And so there needs to be some give and take. And so with that in mind, there will be numbers coming from Ellers that will basically, if we bond X amount, it'll have this effect on the tax rate or mill rate. And, we want to be cognizant of the taxpayers' monies, so on and so forth. So I arbitrarily took that $3 million number out, and then the other 3 that you see underneath streets are a continuation of our programs that we've had over the last several years, which includes the sidewalk, curb and gutter replacement, the trail maintenance, and then the alley replacement projects that we want to continue to fund and just kind of pick away at alleys and trails over the next 10, 15 years and get them up to snuff. And then parks, just for your information, my goal for parks is to kind of keep that number around $200,000 on average each year, just to give you an idea of what what the park board shoots for. And the park board generates their own CIP plan. It's on the outdoor recreation plan, and basically we pull those priorities off of that plan. Mike, you're aware of that. So with that being said, obviously that the first 2023, you'll see the various types of equipment that we're replacing. A single axle plow truck, which we already kind of had pre-approval for several months ago, just because of the lead times. So that has to be included. The 1.5 ton truck to replace a 2001 Dodge. Then you see the streets. So that's the 2023. Any questions on that one? No?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Because Dean, you mentioned that, and we're going to get into
Yeah.
your sheets, but that you had also perhaps budgeted the
So,
sidewalk and curb in yours.
this is maybe a miscommunication between
Yeah.
us. So
we can
there's a
reduce
little
it.
bit of overlap on some of the sidewalk and alley stuff in mine. So just keep that in mind that, we may be able to take that out of mine and, do seal coat another street instead.
Or
that
we
kind of
could do
thing.
some makeup. That is one
Yeah.
regretful thing that this year, because of all the, I don't want to say cost overruns, because that implies something was done wrong. Everything is just more expensive. And we haven't been able to do everything. And so we've had to step back from the plan of doing trails
Right.
this year. And, so if we can do more next year, that'd be great. Try to, not just the new ones, of course, that we're hoping to have, but keep the ones in good shape. But anyway,
Yeah.
thank you.
And just for the public to know, in the CIP, I had budgeted $50,000 each year for both sidewalk, curb and gutter, that's one line item at $50K, trail maintenance at $50K, and then alley reconstruction at $50K. So we just approved an alley project for $100,000, and that gets you 2 alleys. So it kind of gives you an idea of how much $50,000 covers. It's basically one. The reason why our alley project was really high, that was bid, is because there's a lot of concrete work that needs to happen on the apron, so on and so forth. So maybe we can squeeze in 2 if it's just kind of a mill and overlay through an alley, but it gives the public an idea of how far that money actually
Yeah.
goes. It's not very far, to say the least.
And the city bears that expense 100%.
Correct. Yep.
So that is not assessed to the property owners at all. So, okay.
Do you have a question, Sarah?
I was just, trail maintenance, is that more or less blacktopping it, or is that, keeping it plowed during the winter?
So it's basically, it has nothing to do with plowing.
Okay,
It's more crack filling,
okay,
fog sealing, and more than likely at the beginning, more of like reclaiming and repaving.
okay.
We got a lot of trails that are in very poor shape that just need that fresh new layer of pavement. And then once we get caught up on those, then we can kind of go into more of a preventative maintenance mode, like we do with a lot of our newer streets. So that's the goal. So after that 2023, it obviously it really kind of backs down because we don't have that large $8 million expense that's identified for the public works facility. 2024 is 3.8, 2025 is 3.3, 2026 is 3.9, and 2027 is 3.6. So kind of staying in line with that general premise where equipment is around 300 to 400. The streets are around 3 million, and then the parks amenities are around 200,000. So the only other outlier that is in here are a couple more upgrades to City Hall, air condition, air quality. If any of you have come into this room, the council chambers, it's musty, and we need to do some additional air quality stuff here just so that everybody's safe that comes into this room. So that's what that $100,000 is for. Other than that, I don't know if you have any further questions for me. If not, Dean maybe can jump in on the street stuff, if that's okay with you, Joy.
Does anyone want to talk about the building,
Oh.
the prospective building? Did you get a chance to see the slide deck that Mike sent out last night?
Yeah, I haven't read the whole entire thing yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we always talk about the city's job is to fix potholes or whatever, but we're working out of a building buildings,
Yeah.
multiple buildings, age of buildings, inefficiency of buildings. So Yeah, I think I have more to digest on that, but I think the message is clear that we're scattered, we're in we're all over. They're inefficient buildings. You look at the fire department, not the building, we've already talked about that. But moving that up on the hill based on how this city has grown and changed the demographics. And so I think not just that department, but your department, or, those departments we have to keep on the front end and not just put patches together all the time, so.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from that study was what I put in my email is a city our size is typically operating out of about 70,000 to 80,000 square feet, and we're operating out of 32,000 square feet, so less than half the amount of space, whether that's office space, equipment space, storage space, so on and so forth.
So that's under rough, 32,000.
Yeah, right.
So you got a lot of things being stored outside.
Right. Well, we have everything inside. It's just packed to the gills, and you have to move 4 pieces of equipment to get to one. And then just, from prospective employers, as I continue to hire, replace people that retire, that come here and look at our facilities, they're from the 1960s. They're dingy. They're old. You got one bathroom being shared by 14 employees, 25 employees in the summertime when seasonals come, no office space. And as we all know, in this day and age, digital, everything is being reported to the DNR via, or, PACER ratings, reports, and I have one computer for 12 full-time employees. So it's just one of those things where, and it's been talked about for 12, 15 years. I find old files upstairs, it's just one of those things where I think we all know that there's a need there. It's just a matter of getting all on the same page and making it a priority, whether that's this year, next year, or 3 years, 4 years now. But definitely a need there.
Yeah.
I've a question. What would happen to those existing properties once the building would be built? So once you had your new location with those other sites, would they go up for sale?
Yeah.
So that would certainly be a way to help with offset the expense.
Yep, we would look to offload those and for redevelopment.
Okay.
And we did get pricing on that between the west side, the west garage and the east garage. It's about $1 million in property value, approximately.
Okay, so those are the two that you would most likely.
Yep.
East garage has a great view of Malibu, and west, you could probably see the river from there.
You could see the river from the west garage, yeah.
They could be multifamily or something like that. Oh, interesting idea. Have you guys, either one of you, been in the east garage? And I know it's interesting.
I have not. Haven't been invited.
Sorry, Mike. You got to invite yourself.
Show up.
Yeah.
I know its location. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm concerned about the air quality, the lighting. It's not very pleasant for the few people that are really working there. There's several people that work there pretty much all day.
Yeah. And the safety standards have just come leaps and bounds since when those buildings were, we retrofitted both of those buildings to kind of get by, and whether it's welding or machining or woodworking or, there's just so many different safety measures that we're just so far behind on, right? So there, like I said, there's definitely a need there, and I'll keep pushing for it until we get one someday.
What about the other locations that we have, like the Kratley Road that you mentioned? So what would those become then? So
Kratley Road, we would continue to use that for overflow, seasonal storage. I know like Hudson Boosters stores some things in there for their event. Use it as a landfill site to hold some materials. What I would like to do is, at any new site, obviously in the study there's one site, or there's one lot in the entire city that would house a facility the size that we're looking at, which is on the corner of O'Neill and Hanley in the industrial park. What I'd want to do is bring as much of that material and bunker it at our site, so we're not wasting the time going back and forth to the North Hudson to get, dump leaves or get gravel or get black dirt. It's like our goal is to try and get everything on one site so that we're not running all over town and wasting gas and wasting employees' times to do these, the normal day-to-day operations. But I think it's in the best interest of the city to keep that site.
Keep that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Any other questions or comments on that? In that, I think one of the challenges for us today is, we're evaluating needs and helping to prioritize, but sitting here today, we don't know really what the funding is going to be available and, the bonding level that the city might be undertaking. Because as Mike said, there's other departments wanting to put ideas forward, so that'll be a matter of sorting things out. So let's just set that issue aside, the Public Works Capital Improvement Plan, and talk about the infrastructure CIP from Dean.
All right. So in front of you have the maps of each different option in a map form, so you can kind of see, 1.5 versus 2 versus 3, et cetera, as to what we could be doing for each of these funding options. So we looked at 5 different funding options: 1.5 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, and 5 million per year. And obviously, the more funding that we have, the more streets and whatnot we're able to maintain. So kind of as we were putting this all together, kind of we're operating under a few parameters to keep in mind as we're discussing this. First would be, we want to keep our streets that are in good condition in good condition. We don't want to let them slide like we have been for the streets that are currently not in good condition in our city. And as you keep streets in good condition, the cost overall is much less. So we feel that to be wise with our money, that we want to keep those streets in good condition. So you may get questions from members of the public, like, oh, hey, I mean, the street is somewhat new. Why are you doing anything to it? Because my street's fallen apart. And it's a great question, but we've, over the long term, and we're tasked with looking not only at the short term, but the long term, that we want to make sure that we're being wise over a number of years rather than just looking at what's right in front of us right now. And then the other thing is making sure that our busier arterial streets are taken care of. And as Mike and I and the previous iterations of the Public Works Committee have kind of gone with, is that in the past few years and continuing into this year and continuing into the future, we want to make sure that our arterials are kept up because they're serving the most people in our community, our residents, our businesses.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Rattle off some arterials.
Okay, yes.
I like to give those terms.
So arterials are our busiest streets, essentially. So some examples would be at Carmichael Road, Vine Street, Hanley Road, Crestview, Cooley, 2nd Street. Those are some of our arterials. I think that's most of our arterials.
Is St. Croix Street one?
I believe it is classified as an arterial,
Okay.
yes. Yep. So I'm sure I've missed some, but those are just examples. And so 11th Street, kind of Hagen, those are some examples also. So we want to keep those streets that are the busiest streets in good condition because they're serving the most people in our town. And then after that is kind of when we start getting into the, lower volume streets, reconstructions and mill and overlays and et cetera, whatever those streets are needing at that point in time. Trying to leverage, where we have new developments coming in, like downtown, potentially, like along Commercial. There's 2 new potential developments on kind of kitty corners across from each other, 2nd and Commercial. So while we have those developments potentially coming in, it would make sense for us to reconstruct the streets at that time because they're already going to be needing to tear up the streets for putting in new services and new sidewalks and whatnot for their development. So, it's an economy of scale kind of thing. So if they're already disturbing things, if we tag along with that, that will help us to lower our costs effectively as well. So just that stuff to keep in mind there. I know Mike and I, in particular, talking about arterials, Carmichael Road is very particularly important to us in that it's a large footprint of a street. It is the busiest street in town. And if we lose that street, that is going to be a mess to have to reconstruct later. And so if we can get it before it gets to that point, that is going to be the best for all of us here. So the sooner we can do that one, the better as well.
Because we were going to do a crack fill on it. Was it this year? That we were
Last year, even,
last
I
year?
think, yeah.
We went on. We started walking it and driving it. You really don't realize the shape that it's in. I mean, just driving it, you're like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
But once you actually like get out and start walking it and looking at the cracking, a lot of alligator cracking, some rutting going on. It's to that point now, like Dean said, if we don't take care of it sooner rather than later, it's going to be too far gone, and we're going to have to be reconstructing it. And then the price tag on that is going to be exorbitant, and it's just going to be a challenge to reconstruct it altogether. So trying to get it
That's Carmichael South.
correct,
Okay.
Joyce, Carmichael
It's
South.
blue and then
Yep.
purple too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Basically from Crestview Drive all the way out to South Brecken Drive.
So right now, you think that it needs the full depth reclamation? Am I getting the color right?
No,
Yeah.
sorry. So the color on the maps are based on the year of the
Oh, I'm sorry.
treatment.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're
The
saying.
style of the line on the map corresponds to what it is. And so Carmichael Road at this point in time we feel needs a under seal treatment. So that's milling the top layer, doing a seal coat underneath to hopefully keep a bunch of the cracks from coming back through, and then paving a new layer of fresh pavement on top. Yep.
Great.
And I'm sorry, say once more, where on Carmichael?
Yep, so from Crestview Drive, which is by the Green Mill Restaurant,
Yep.
all the way down to Cooley Trail, which is where the Y camp is,
Okay.
basically.
Southern 94. So I see a few things we've talked about in past months, and I'm paying attention, see?
Good, that's good.
So, the 3rd Street Hill, I know we talked about in going out, submitting applications to the government for funding. I know that East Canyon and West Canyon Drive were on there, for example. But I don't see them on this. Is that because they've been spoken for with a grant in the future?
So East Canyon and West Canyon, we were not successful with the grant that we.
So does that
submitted
go
for.
back in the back of the list?
Well, yeah, for some of those, I guess, more minor streets. I mean, they're
Right.
they're neighborhood important to the neighborhood streets, but not overall.
Right.
Citywide important streets. That makes sense.
it does.
They're more, I guess, collector streets you could call them.
Yeah. It's just a few that I remembered off the top of my head. That, where do they fall on our priorities?
Yep. So we, just as we were looking at this, particularly East Canyon, West Canyon, with the, cost of repaving it without a grant. I mean, until we have a grant, we can't really factor in that we're, going to have a grant. So if a grant shows up and we have more money than we thought or whatever, we're like, yeah, we can add some stuff onto this, that kind of thing. But until we get to that point, it's hard to, factor that in. If that makes sense.
Well, I'm sure the list is changing daily.
Yeah.
And every season of what needs it, what doesn't. So,
Which brings up a good question. So thank you for these maps, because that really helps. It's hard to look at those on the iPad. You provided these sheets with the different
Yeah.
breakdowns.
Yep.
If we make a vote for something or today, does that, lock us into you doing those streets? Or, you guys make your decisions of, like, 3rd Street Hill has had some unexpected problems this year. So, but it generally sets the guidance of what we want.
Yeah, so tonight, we are essentially with our discussion, and if there is any, formal action tonight, is going to be a kind of a recommendation to city staff as to like the direction this committee would like to, or suggest essentially for, like Mike was saying, this is a piece of the overall pie of, we got public safety, departments needing X, Y, and Z. We've got, you know, I know we have some things going on with the library right now. That's a piece of it, or, you know, that kind of stuff. You got, you know, Aaron and Mike Johnson and whatever are kind of tasked with the overall, you know, pie, and eventually the city council will be tasked with looking at the overall pie. And right now we're looking at a significant sliver of that pie, but not the whole thing. If that makes sense. While we're discussing this tonight, so, you know, coming out of this discussion, we'll be, you know, recommending to Aaron, to Mike, and to whoever, as we're continuing on with the discussion with budget and bonding and et cetera. Okay, this committee feels that this is the level we want to pursue, and knowing that based on the entire piece of the pie, or the entire pie, what's going on with it, we might not be able to attain that, or we might be able to attain that. And then we'll be coming back, you know, as we formally adopt the budget and the CIP, then that will be a time that the whole thing will be approved. So we're not approving the CIP necessarily tonight. It's a recommendation to move forward with certain things that we want to see with the CIP. Did I explain that accurately, Mike and everybody else?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So, okay, that's why I'm here, for the dumb questions, right?
East Canyon Drive, just to
Did you
give
find
a
it on
chance.
the list?
It was paved in 2003.
Yep.
It had a route and seal in 2016.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yep.
Well,
And just because I know a few people that live there,
Yeah.
so that's my reference point of,
Yeah.
because you and I had the conversation that, hey, it's a fairly new road, but it was on that list for the grant,
Yeah.
and you said, well, we want to stay ahead of the game, not always
Right.
patching potholes, which that's my mantra on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'd rather stay ahead of the game than always be patching stuff we should have fixed 2 years ago. So. I guess, simple question, maybe it's not a simple question. You've given us a couple of scenarios, 1.5 million through 5 million, a couple steps in there. So based on that, why those? Is that to some extent, why not more? You know, or whatever. Why did we stop there? Because what I remember is last meeting we had, you had that PowerPoint of, and it was the scary math of 137 million? Do I have that number right?
27.
Yep.
Oh, okay, well, no, wait.
You were close.
And the idea, if we just maintain what we're doing,
Yeah.
we'd be caught up with old roads again in 80 years or whatever. That's what's stuck in my brain. My point is, what would 10 million look like? I'm not here to raise taxes. I'm not here to say let's whatever. But I'm just wondering, how is that something that you think is manageable? That range somewhere in there? Like, we can't survive on less, but we better not ask for more. I'm just trying to wonder, figure out how that came about.
We kind of had to start somewhere. So I didn't mention this, but our previous kind of historical amount per year has been like $1.3 million.
Okay.
And so to jump from 1.3 to 10 or something like that seems, at least in conversations that we've had with senior city staff, like a big hurdle. And also, I know stuff like this building and whatnot saps a lot of that potential to go up to something like $10 million or whatever that number ends up being. So that's kind of the direction that we had to start with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This.
Yeah.
And know too that we are talking about the bonding cycle being a 2-year thing, and so and the CIP is revisited every year, or is intended to. We had some weird stuff with COVID that we didn't revisit it, the past couple of years, but into the future we're hoping to redo this, every year, so that we can plan accordingly for the future. And the bonding again is every 2 years. So if we say we selected $3 million, like Mike had in his spreadsheet there, we'd be locked into $3 million per year for the next 2 years. And then 2 years from now at this time, we can say that, okay, we're way falling behind still at $3 million. And we've got these buildings now out of the way. So now is this the time to take the next step or something like that,
Yeah.
that's going to be probably that conversation again in 2 years. But it's a great question. And if I, had my ideal, thing going on, I probably would, be shooting for, more money, but it's just kind of the factoring everything all together in. That's kind of why we started in this range, I guess, if that makes sense.
And
That does make sense.
there is a borrowing threshold, and I'm outside
Right.
my wheelhouse right now. But a city can only borrow and go into debt so much without it affecting your bond rating
Yep.
and so on and so forth. So I mean, like Dean said, it'd be nice to get more, but realistically, the city can't support. We
Yep.
can't. Yeah, it is not realistic to go up to 8 million right away. It's
Right.
not sustainable.
And back to your pizza, food analogies work with me. You knew you couldn't have the whole pizza, so like, what's a slice that I probably could get type thing?
There you go.
Okay. Makes sense. Thanks.
I think that's one of the challenges for the council is to continue to identify more funding. And, things have been discussed. That is one thing we really appreciate that Dean is working on getting grants that can ease this cost.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we should choose what we think might be a realistic number to do more. Yes, we're hearing you in the message and we want to do more. It's sort of like if you really want something for Christmas, you ask for that one thing. If you ask for too many things, you might not get the one that you want.
Right.
You know what I mean? Strategy.
You guys are good with analogies.
Yeah, no kidding.
A few questions, if I could. And I know, Mike, you alluded to this, and I mentioned it to Dean earlier. One of the things that would really help me make a good decision is, based on what our commitment would be, is what would that be the tax implication for our community members? And I think both of you guys have mentioned Aaron's working on that. So I know that I would feel more comfortable making a decision knowing that. That being said, what I've heard repeatedly from community members is, one, infrastructure really matters to them. They really want good roads, but they are very concerned about expenses. And so I'd like a much better understanding before I could really,
Absolutely.
feel comfortable with that. The other thing is, it's something that, Mike, you alluded to, the roads. I happen to, I think, probably the two districts where the roads are probably
Worse shape.
in the worst shape are happen to be District 5 and probably District 1, I'm thinking. I mean, the bulk of them. So I would like a better understanding, and I get this whole arterial thing. I understand that. I understand what you were talking about, East Canyon. I'm just thinking of the people that are on Green Street, that are on Fillmore, that are on 3rd Street. And can you help me understand where we are putting the priorities when it comes to those? Like, how bad are those roads going to get before they get done?
That's part of the struggle with this is that, so I'm going to take like the Fillmore Oak area, or, kind of that chunk as an example here. So what that area needs is a reconstruction. I mean, to put the lipstick on the pig of just repaving something is going to cost a bunch of money and not solve the problems there, right? Unfortunately, reconstruction is the most expensive thing that we have. And so I think for Fillmore and Oak, if I recall correctly, to reconstruct Fillmore, 12th Oak, Maple, kind of that corridor there, that is about $3 million or something like that right there. So if we have $3 million annually,
Wow.
that's it for like that year, that kind of thing. So, what we kind of try to do with these is, for the options that were larger amounts of money, to kind of try to front load a bunch of the steel coats and smaller cost stuff to right away, so that frees up that money later to do the expensive stuff like, reconstructing Fillmore and Oak and that kind of thing. So that being said, at a certain budget amount, say if you pick $2 million, like Fillmore and Oak itself is going to be more than that. And so if, it's just things you have to kind of keep in mind. Could you split it into 2 different projects to make it happen? I mean, we can look at doing that, so just doing Fillmore versus just doing Oak, that kind of thing. But, if we don't fund these projects or this funding level more sooner, then those streets are going to suffer more. They're just going to get worse. Everything deteriorates over time. And, the more we wait to do these streets, they're going to slip down to PACE rating 1 or 2. And we might be talking about grinding them up and turning them into gravel.
The other option is to kind of forego the focus on the arterials.
I don't think we should do that.
I think that's a conundrum. I mean, that's the problem that we all face. So, yeah, you might only get 4 phone calls now, but then when Carmichael's bad, you might get 1,000. I know it's challenging, but yeah, I think it'd be great if we could set up a program where, and obviously it's all money driven, right? Where you can stay ahead on the preventative stuff because it's your best bang for your buck, right? I think we all agree about that. And then we can focus a majority of our monies on arterials, but then maybe just pick away 1 or 2, one street each year, every other year, where it's the worst of the worst. And all right, let's just bring this one back up. And then you go to the next one, you bring that one back up. Where you're kind of hitting those residential streets that don't get the priority, but yet you're still trying to fix the worst of the worst of the worst type of thing. But yeah. It's tough when you got miles and miles of roads that are all in bad shape. Which one do you pick?
We've got 75 miles of roads or something like that,
80,
Mike.
yeah,
80. And
2 ways, so it's.
And you don't want it to turn into turn into this person's yelling the loudest, and that's one that we're going to do, because then that just doesn't.
I know.
It's not a good situation for all of us.
Right.
So there's got to be some thought behind it. So that's when you start talking about underground utilities, the age of those. What are the pedestrian accommodations? Are there improvements that need to be there? Maybe that's why we tackle this street over this street, because there's a lot more impact that this street will have on the overall community versus Street B.
So like the streets that maybe are border schools or something like that.
Yep, exactly. So that's another way we can look at it too. It's tough.
It is tough.
Hard.
I wish we could do them all.
Yes.
Was that a motion?
Are you going to second it?
Checkbook. I agree with you, Sarah. It is really challenging because we don't know the whole picture and the tax impact. The levy limit that we're up against, and then certainly thinking of our taxpayers is a key factor for us. And I know some of the budget, the staff is pulling that together, and so we'll get more guidance or input on how much we're able to bond, for example. At some point, we're going to need to do that Public Works building. It's been on the list for probably 15 years. And I think I do want to validate what Mike was saying. I think it's a tough hiring environment right now, and so to get good people attracted to work here, and again, they are important employees. They're the ones that roll out at 3 a.m. to plow the streets, that showed up after the straight line winds last fall, to just pitch in. And so I think that's something we have to keep in mind, but also then we have to balance, how do we move forward? We can't stay at the 1.3 million because we're just seal coating our arteries and patching right now. So I don't know if we'll make a decision or a recommendation today. I don't know how you guys would advise.
Yeah, I don't think we have to. I think the wisest thing to do is to let Aaron get back some of those numbers, the tax implications based on some of the things that we brought forward tonight and how that impacts the overall, taxpayers' bill. So you can make a more informed choice or decision. And obviously this is the first time that you're seeing this information. You're going to see it half a dozen other times between now and November, so it's not necessary that you make any action or approvals tonight.
Sure.
So we just want to get out in front of you so you kind of start thinking about it and so on and so forth, and we'll bring more information to you as we move along here. if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's very helpful. And I think as we've really dug into these grants and some of the other projects we've been working on, it does seem like, I think you used the word overrun, not overrun, but just, you talk about something in January and the price tag in August is,
Yeah.
just not doubled. Well, sometimes it is. So for us to sit here and say, we've done 1.3 million for year after year after year, and then we have the facts that our roads aren't getting it better on their own, and if we do this 20-year catch-up game, that's not the city we want to be. And just with inflation, I don't think we, again, I know I'm not directing us. I'm just saying we have to walk that balance of what's best for the taxpayers, but also we can't then say, well, let's not really fund it too much. It'll go away, or kick the can down the road. Probably can't kick the can down the road anymore because there's so many potholes. But I mean, I think that we have to digest the idea that the cup of coffee this morning was more expensive. Our gas was more expensive. Anything we're buying is more expensive. Our roads are more expensive too. So it's just kind of reality.
Yes, they particularly are because of the petroleum.
Yeah.
That is hitting hard, even beyond the regular inflation rate, I'm guessing. I don't know the math on that, but you were saying the other day, give us some figures, what the asphalt pavement usually, you were telling me something about price per ton or something.
Oh, yeah. So, I can't remember what exactly told you. So,
What was the bid
I would
that was
say
way
like 80 to
high?
120 or something.
So rewind a few years when I was not working here, but my previous job. So say 5 years ago, something like that, we had mill and overlay projects, reconstruction projects. We were seeing asphalt prices at $50-something a ton.
Yeah.
55 to $60 a ton. I think one project I was down to like 51. It was great. And then compare that with now. We're at, we got the bid for that project up there, and it was $100, $105, $110 a ton, something like that. So
Wow.
it essentially has doubled in 5 years.
Wow.
Well, the alley bid was 120 a ton and 180 a ton.
That's what it was.
Yeah, so
I
I
remember those numbers.
estimated the alley project 120 a ton. The low bid was 155, and the high bid was 170.
There you go. Yeah, 155 was low.
So
We're going to pay $155 a ton to do the alley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's 3 times, okay.
it's
So it's a tough time.
inflating in
It
the
is.
spirits and inflating in the wallet.
The inflation is deflating.
Yes.
For sure. Well, does anyone have any other comments? Does anyone want to make a motion, or should we just consider we had a good discussion? We can keep asking, contacting Mike and Dean if you have particular questions as well.
Well, I would like to say I recognize that we have so much work to do, and I am grateful for all the effort you guys, both of you, have put into this. And I would love for us to be able sometime in the future to really invest in this properly. As much as we possibly can. So I look forward to those financial figures so we can make a more informed decision. So I'd rather not make a formal motion at this time until we have that. But the minute we have that, I think we need to move forward so you guys really have a good sense of what our hopes are.
Okay.
Would this be something that we should revisit next month? Public Works, I would imagine. I shouldn't put words in Aaron's mouth, but I would imagine he probably would have some more information by
I
then.
would guess by mid-September,
Yeah.
our typical date. We could always reschedule or have an extra meeting if needed. Do we need to vote on these officially to move it forward, that this is what Public Works is requesting?
Yeah. So once we get those numbers, some of the bonding numbers, what we've typically done in the past is we plug that into this CIP plan, right? And then Public Works Committee makes a formal recommendation to Finance to pass the Public Works CIP as presented. That's kind of how we've done it.
Are we causing major delays by waiting for some more information?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, we still have time.
But we wanted to start the discussion now
That's
because
great.
we are moving into that season,
Yeah.
so to speak. So we don't want to start the conversation in September, October when we only have,
I
month.
appreciate
A
it.
month
It's
to-
a lot to
Make a
absorb.
decision, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a big decision. a lot of high ticket items,
And
obviously.
this one is unique in the sense that we're coming out of a 2-year CIP that was COVID driven. We didn't update it.
We kept it really
yearly.
low, yeah.
And so we're kind of starting fresh with 5 whole years of CIP, at least on the street side. And I'm sure kind of on the equipment and building side as well. So it's different than normal. We hope that, say a year from now, that we've done the groundwork now to point us in the right direction. So the conversation next year will hopefully be much smoother. We can just make minor tweaks. And then, 2 years from now, when we enter a new bonding cycle, there'll be some more discussion at that point in time for funding
Right.
levels and whatnot. But, yeah.
Comments from you, Mike?
Just a quick question. So more of the kind of the mechanics of this.
Yep.
So although we're not going to tonight, if we were to just pick randomly a number and say, hey, Dean, this is great. Here's the middle one, 3 million. Okay. So that's, we know that it has to go through the meat grinder a bunch.
Yep.
But then each project that we're specifically talking about, Carmichael, that still will be bid out. That'll still, and with those bids will be accepted or rejected based on Public Works, Public Safety, or Public Works.
Public Works.
So this isn't any kind of blank check that's being handed over. This isn't any kind of, this is budgetary talk. And then each one of these projects can still be scrutinized based on
Yes.
priorities and need and expense based on whenever we put them out to bid type thing. So it's the very start of this. We're very concerned about what comes out the other end, but this is the very start of the process. So
Yep. And the CIP also, I wrote about this in the issue sheet, but particularly CIP is helpful for us in year one. So 2023 for us, like we have to start designing and surveying and whatever, like essentially this fall, next,
Right.
winter, that kind of stuff for those projects. So the guidance is most important for year one, still somewhat important for year 2, and then years 3 through 5 are a little bit less important.
kinda know, yeah.
because,
More flexibility there.
yeah, more flexibility. So, so keep that in mind as we're going to discuss this again, say in a month from now. 2023 is particularly important for us in figuring out which projects to do. So as we continue that conversation, just make sure that you know that.
Thank you. Thank you for walking
Yeah.
us through it
Very
and
helpful.
explaining those details. And I know there'll be more information coming. Look forward to hearing that from the city administrator and see what the other budgets, other department budgets look like. Does anyone have any old business that they wanted to bring up today? How about project update?
I was wondering, I've had a few people ask for an update about the boat landing. I know we've had some weather and some water issues, but
Yep. So the schedule right now, speaking with the contractor, they are setting up string line for curb,
I'm sorry, sewer line?
string line
A string line?
to,
Okay.
to place the curbing.
Okay,
So that is happening today. They're going to pour curb the remainder of this week, next week, and then they scheduled the asphalt contractor for the 15th and 16th
okay,
of August. Probably wait a day, come back and stripe, and then probably open up shortly thereafter. So we're hopefully open by August 20th, and then there'll be some various restoration, standing the lights that we can do while the boat launch is open, just blocking off certain areas of the landing. But I'm trying to get it open as soon as possible.
okay.
Yeah.
So we're just a few weeks away, probably.
Yeah, we're nearing the end. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
looks great, by the way.
Does.
Yeah.
Looks really good.
I just want to give an update too. So our street maintenance project is underway right now. They just finished fog sealing today on Grandview Drive. So we are currently laying out all the pavement marking, striping. So they'll be in on Friday to start doing that as well. So that project will be wrapping up soon. The Hudson Physicians project, we had a good conversation with them yesterday and getting that finished up for the extension of Hillcrest Drive. We're hoping that by the end of August that they'll be essentially done with that extension. There's some scheduling around subcontractors and stuff that's been a little slow. But hopefully that will be done pretty soon with that too.
Yeah. And then hopefully the next time we meet, the Carmichael Bridge WISDOT project is completed.
I was just going to ask.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think it's still kind of around Labor Day is what they're shooting for. Have you heard anything else?
So they have one more stage to shift traffic in that is, I believe, scheduled for about a week from today, I believe. And then that stage will last for about 7 to 10 days, I believe. And then they're done with all the repair work and stuff. And then the last thing that happens then is the epoxy overlay of the bridge. And so that is a week or so process, and they'll be doing that mostly at night with lane closures, that kind of thing. But the majority of the traffic impact stuff should be, knock on wood, done in, say, 2-3-ish weeks from now. So I know they have run across a lot more degradation of the bridge than they expected. And so that has taken them just more time to do. And so that's an unfortunate thing sometimes when you can't inspect what the work is that you're doing.
But thank goodness it's being done.
That's very true. Yeah. So.
And that overlay, at no time will there might be a single lane, or a north and or east and west, I guess. North and south.
North and south.
Good thing I'm not the engineer. Maybe reduced by a lane or two, but it'll never be closed.
Never be fully closed.
Okay.
Nope. I believe they did say that because they're doing the work in off-peak hours at night.
Yep.
And I believe there will be some times where it'll be down to one lane in each direction.
Shifted to one side.
Shifted to one
Okay.
side or the other. Yep. So they have the room to do the work out there. But like I said, should be at night, and so it shouldn't be too impactful to the general public with that.
That'll be good.
So we'll be very happy to have that
That'll
one
be good.
checked off the list.
Checks the list. Speaking of WISDOT, Mike, do you want to share a little bit about the visit last week of the governor?
Oh, yes. So Governor Tony Evers visited the city of Hudson last week as part of his pothole patrol. And so I got a phone call on a Tuesday saying that the governor wants to come to town and he wants to fill a pothole. So I had to drive around for a couple hours trying to find one because by this time of year we're kind of caught up. And so we came up with a location on Boudry, and we showed him our new spray patch unit truck. He was pretty impressed with it. It's kind of the first time that he's seen one in action, and just kind of went over, some of the safety features and the efficiencies that we've gained because of purchasing it. Because in the other communities, that he's visited, he's had to do it the old school way as far as shoveling hot mix in the holes and tamping it in. So I told him we don't do that over here anymore, and so he got a chuckle out of that. But it was a great visit. Obviously, some council members came out. The mayor came out. He answered some questions from the press, and it was a good visit. So it's always good to have him here and kind of continue those conversations and build those relationships with Madison, because oftentimes we get overlooked over here, and so it's always good to keep a bug in their ear as far as what our needs are. So.
Yeah, we're on the western edge, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, hats off to you. You're very innovative with that piece of equipment. I was impressed with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just one more thing that I have, and maybe for Sarah especially, because it's in your district. So if you've noticed, we've had some construction going on down just on the west side of the harbor lot here, down from the old fire station. So we've ran into a sanitary sewer service line that was not working properly, and the sewage was coming up through the ground, through the sidewalk. So we had to go in and fix it. There's a couple of businesses on the line along with the old fire hall. It was something that needed attention, and so that's what that commotion is about. And hopefully today Zappa has it fixed, and then we're able to kind of open some things back up. But just to let you know, that's what happened down in that location. And it was Dean and I both cried when we had to open up the street, but where the problem occurred was basically in one of the travel lanes, the northbound travel lane of 2nd Street. So that lasted a whole whopping 1 year for that road before we cut into it. So
That's why you're crying.
yeah.
Yes, okay.
I maybe called and asked Dean, I'm like, what is going on?
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and for a word to the wise here. It was a bit of a back when it was somebody I think was a bit cheap in not replacing the service line all the way out to the right of way. And so that's something we don't do anymore.
Yeah.
We make sure that all the service lines are replaced out to the right of way because this stuff happens if you don't do the right work. So we definitely will be making sure that any future projects will not have this happen. So
That's all I got.
Okay. Thanks for the updates. Any communication or items for future agendas?
Sometime after September, I was hoping that we could revisit our exploring composting options. But after September, I made a commitment.
Sure. Yes, I've had people mention composting and asking me about that too, so
Okay.
that would be good
Yep,
to
sounds like we all are.
discuss and make sure residents know what options are available for them right now and what considerations the city has. But yeah, we can definitely, sounds good. Any other comments or thoughts?
Move to adjourn?
I'll second that.
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
So Joy, we probably should